At 5:47 a.m., Daniel Reed sat in his car and did not turn off the engine. The address on his phone was less than 20 meters away. He had done this hundreds of times before: park, walk, knock, repeat. 45 years old, badge in his pocket, routine in his bones. But that morning, his hands did not move. He kept thinking about one strange detail in the file: subject has no criminal record, stable work history, primary caregiver. He told himself it didn't matter. Orders were orders. Then the door opened before he knocked. The woman looked at him as if she already knew his name. "You're early," she said softly, her English careful but clear. Daniel froze for half a second, long enough to feel something slip inside him. He showed his badge, said the words he had memorized years ago, and watched her shoulders rise and fall as she breathed in. Her name was Elena Morales. She asked for 1 minute to put on her shoes. He nodded, breaking protocol without meaning to. Inside the small apartment, there were signs of a real life: a child's backpack by the wall, a plant on the window, a radio playing low Spanish music. This was not supposed to feel like this. At the processing center, Elena did not cry. She asked questions. Smart ones. She listened. Daniel found himself answering more than required, explaining steps, timelines, possibilities. When she thanked him, he felt uncomfortable. Agents were not supposed to be thanked. Over the next days, delays kept her case open, and Daniel was assigned to supervise her check-ins. Each meeting felt longer than the last. They talked about simple things: weather, work, silence. Daniel noticed how she held herself, calm but tired, strong but alone. At night, he began thinking about her instead of the news, instead of his empty apartment. One evening, as she stood to leave, Elena looked at him and said, "You don't look like a bad man." Daniel had no answer. He watched her walk away, knowing something dangerous had already begun, something no rulebook had prepared him for. Daniel tried to fix the problem by becoming more professional. He spoke less, avoided eye contact, and kept meetings short. It didn't work. Elena noticed the change immediately. She became quieter too, more careful with her words, as if they were both pretending nothing had shifted. But something had. Between forms and signatures, a strange trust was growing, slow and unwanted. Weeks passed. Elena was allowed to work while her case was under review, and Daniel was required to confirm her employment. He visited the small bakery where she worked early mornings. Flour covered her hands, and for the first time he saw her smile without fear behind it. She introduced him to her boss, proud, steady. On the wall was a photo of a young boy. "My son," she said quickly, then corrected herself. "My nephew. I raised him." Daniel nodded, understanding more than she had said. Responsibility recognized responsibility. Their conversations deepened, carefully. Elena spoke about crossing the desert, about nights when she thought she would not wake up, about learning English by listening to radio shows while cleaning offices. Daniel spoke about his divorce, how his job had followed him home until nothing else could stay. He admitted he no longer knew who he was without his badge. Saying it out loud scared him, but also relieved him. For the first time in years, someone was listening, not judging. One afternoon, Elena missed a check-in. Daniel felt panic before logic. He called her. No answer. An hour later she arrived, breathless, apologizing. Her nephew had been sick. Daniel wanted to say it was fine, that he understood, but the rules were clear. Instead, he gave her a warning instead of a report. That night, he lay awake, fully aware that he had crossed a line, not for love yet, but for humanity. And once crossed, there was no easy way back. The final decision came on an ordinary Tuesday, which somehow made it heavier. Daniel sat in the same office, under the same flickering light, but he was no longer the same man who had parked outside an address months earlier. Elena sat across from him, hands folded, eyes calm in a way that only comes after long fear. The system was moving fast now, too fast. New enforcement policies, pressure from above, numbers to meet. This time, there would be no delays. But Daniel had learned how the system breathed. He had studied it like a second language. He brought forward evidence others had ignored: Elena's years of tax payments, her essential worker status during the pandemic, her role as the sole caregiver of a U.S. citizen child. It was not a miracle. It was persistence. Long meetings. Quiet arguments. One supervisor shaking his head, another finally nodding. The word discretion appeared where removal once stood. When Daniel told Elena the outcome, his voice did not shake, but his hands did. She had been granted legal residency through a special humanitarian adjustment. She stared at him, not understanding at first. Then she stood up, covered her mouth, and laughed through tears. It was not loud or dramatic. It was real. Around them, the office continued as usual, phones ringing, printers humming, America moving forward without noticing this small victory. Daniel resigned 2 weeks later. Not in anger. In clarity. He took a job helping immigrants navigate paperwork legally, using the knowledge he once used to remove them. Elena enrolled in night classes, her English growing stronger, her future finally open. They did not rush love. They walked into it slowly, like people who knew what it cost. On a warm evening, they sat on a bench watching Elena's nephew play in the park. Daniel felt the weight in his chest lift, replaced by something steady. The world was still complicated. The laws were still strict. But inside that complexity, they had found a human answer. And sometimes, that was enough to change a life, and leave a quiet, lasting feeling in the heart of anyone who heard their story.